welcome to Mapping Inspirational Women podcast today. Today I'm with two guests. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Maybe I'll start. My name is Svanborg Jónsdóttir. I'm Icelandic, born and educated in Iceland mostly, a little bit in the UK actually. I used to be a primary school teacher for almost 30 years, and later when I got the opportunity to learn more, I was very excited to do that, and later on I got an opportunity to do a PhD, which I did, and I've been in teacher education more or less since 2011, a little bit sooner though, but my PhD was finished in December in 2011. And I've been very fortunate to work with very good people in teacher education. One among them is the one that is sitting here with us. That is Hafdís.
So Hafdís.
Yes, my name is Hafdís Guðjónsdóttir, and I was also a woman from Iceland. I was an elementary teacher for about 26 years until I started working at the university. I was like Swanborg, lucky that I got to go back to school and worked on special education. It's not that I wanted to be really a special educator, but more that I wanted to be able to teach all kinds of children. And I got my BA in special ed in Iceland, but then we didn't have programs for teachers as a master program or the doctorate program, so I had to go to the US. So I went to the University of Oregon and studied there, first for my master for 1.5 years, and then came back to Iceland and went back and taught for 3 years, but went back again and did my PhD and graduated in the year 2000 and got a job at the university right away. So that's where I've been for the last 22 years. So I was I was a teacher for 48 years.
Yeah.
26 at the elementary and 22 at the university. I'm also a mother of 3 children, and I have 7 grandchildren, and that is also a big part of my life. And I'm married to my husband, Thor Bragason, and we've been married almost 50 years.
Wow.
Just we need few more months. So that's a little bit about myself.
Great. And how long have you two known each other, if you don't mind me asking?
I always say that I got to know her this spring 2011 because that's when I remember that we really started working together. But I know now that I had seen her before, I had met her before, but it was not until 2011 that it was more than just meeting her. We started to work together.
That's how you started meeting then.
Yes.
I see.
Maybe I'll mention that my specialty is innovation and entrepreneurial education, or innovation education, which is maybe a little bit unusual. And Hafdís offered me a space in her course to teach. And she said that I could teach what I was best at. So I taught innovation education. And she was focusing on inclusion in education. And it turned out, especially through, we realized through our self-study researches, that they worked very well together, innovation education and inclusion.
Innovative education, inclusion.
Not innovative education. It's a special concept. Innovation education.
Innovation.
Yeah, it's more specific than innovative. Innovative can be something that is unusual. But information education is something quite special.
Okay. I hope you will talk more about it later. Now, let's go to the starter question. As a geographer, I'm always quite curious, like about places and space and how people find connections to them places. So I would like to ask you where are your favorite places in the world?
Shall I start? You have to say our name so we don't talk
okay.
at the same time.
Swanborg, would you like to say first?
Thank you. I thought quite a lot about it, and I think my favorite places are actually in Iceland, even though I love traveling to other countries. And it's one place that is called Gjáin. It's a place that's not very far from us. It's really beautiful. It's very rather not very big, but it's a kind of a not a crater. It's a small canyon, you could say, with waterfalls. And I can put some information in the chat.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, if you type it down, I could share my screen and then I could search it. Yeah. So.
Yes, and
so people could see how beautiful this place is.
Yeah, you can see the writing of it in the chat. But I also think that one of my favorite places is home, my own home.
Yeah.
And then I want to add one more, and that because I'm retired, and actually I also have this, but we're still working quite a lot. But one of the favorite places I live in the countryside, but I had an office at the University of Iceland, where we are at the School of Education. And I really loved my office because it was kind of a retreat for me. I had a little sofa there, and if I was tired, I could lie down for 15 minutes, or maybe read a book or something. And also it was a place where I could meet with a few students, one or two students. So I actually wanted to mention that this as a favorite place. It was my office, in Reykjavik, because I live in the countryside.
I see.
Yes. So yeah, Gjáin is a really beautiful place. I like to take people there.
Yeah, I hope I get a chance to visit it one day. Even from the Wikipedia page, it's so beautiful. Can't imagine like when you see it in person, it must be stunning.
Yeah, it's worth seeing in person. So that's 3 of my favorite places: my home, Gjáin, and my office.
That's great.
Or former office.
Yeah. What about you, Hafdís?
Well, I love to be in the nature. So I have driven across the US and stopped at their national parks and have seen many, many beautiful places there. I have also traveled in Australia in the wilderness there. But if I really think where it happened, that I went to a place where I couldn't talk for days, and I'm a big talker, and that is a place in Iceland called Þórsmörk, and I just put the name in the chat, and I haven't been there for 50 years. Wow. But I just really want to go back. But I was 13 years old when I went there the first time, and yes, I just felt like, wow, it was so wonderful to be there. But then in the later years, really since COVID started and I had to be working from my home, I always loved my home, but from that time it's double. It's both working from home and having and with my office, and there it is. And being in my office here at home, and I have learned new things about my place, like when the sun is coming up and when the sun is setting, especially when the sun rises in the morning, because before I was always away. I was not at my home when that happened, but I have learned how beautiful that is. So that is one thing as an office, but also just living here, and my hometown that is called Hafnarfjörður, uh, I like to go out for a walk and just walk around it. It's built in the lava, so I like to go and just walk around the lava. So I think those two places. But I must say also, when traveling around the world, I have been to so many beautiful places that it was very difficult to, yeah, this is from my hometown. It was very difficult to choose a place that was my favorite place, because they are there so many.
I think so. It's always difficult to choose, but always a place which touches your heart is where you have good moments, you
Yes.
have love
Yes.
and the friendship and all of these places. So now we are coming to talking about people in your life. So in Mapping Inspirational Women, what I would like to see is to talk about women's stories, and not just with sorry. So it's about like how women in your life have helped you in, for example, like have inspired you in entering the career, and or it doesn't have to be the career, like in your life, their experience, meeting them, how this have changed you. It could be in your family, could be in your education or professional journey, or maybe somewhere you met where you're visiting your favorite place. So it's all at your choice. I would like to see, if possible, could mention 3 of them that first come to your mind. They think they have influenced you profoundly. Who would like to start? Or shall we?
I can start.
Yeah.
First, I would like to mention briefly my own mother, who because I and my siblings, we are 10, or where some of them are now passed away. And my mother loved learning, and she was only able to be in school until she was 12 years old. So she encouraged us to learn as much as we could. So, and I'm the second youngest of those 10. And I think maybe I got the most opportunities, or the 3 perhaps youngest ones. So I credit her for my ambition to learn more, and my interest. It's not just ambition, although it's a part of it, but my joy of learning and such. And then I want to mention a woman called Rósa. It ends with an A. Rósa Gunnarsdóttir. We worked together when I was a compulsory school teacher, or primary school teacher, teaching children about innovation education, how to become innovators. It's a special process that they learn. Rosa called it the heart, head, hand process. The heart is identifying the need or the problem. The head is finding the solution. And the hand is doing something about it, writing about it, making something to help with the solution, or making some actions also. So that was Rósa Gunnarsdóttir. And when I started my master's studies as a primary school teacher, I got a leave to do that. She encouraged me a lot, and I did my research, MA research about innovation education in Iceland. And then she encouraged me to do a PhD, which I did then a few years later. Then I got introduced to my main supervisor, which had huge impact on me as an academic and as a researcher, and believing in myself as a researcher, because you often feel when you're doing research that you are not good enough. But she encouraged me and helped me to believe in myself. And her name is Alison MacDonald. She is from South Africa, but I think her identity is as much Icelandic as South African now, because she's lived very long in Iceland, and she's so clever, and she's so kind, and yeah, I love her. And a part of my committee was also a woman called Anna Kraft, was at the University of Exeter, and that's where I stayed for 1 semester. And she was, unfortunately, she's passed away long before her time. She was a specialist in creativity in education, and an excellent person as well, and really clever, the same as all these women I'm mentioning. And the last one I want to mention is the one that's sitting with us, Hafdís. She has had such a great impact on my career, and also believing in myself and believing in inclusion. And I am so grateful for the collaboration that we had, and also with other colleagues that she has included in our research. They have also been excellent. But I think it's Hafdís that has, for the past 10 years or more, impacted my career as an academic and as a teacher educator a lot. And I'm very thankful for that. So that's the women 5 women I wanted to mention.
Thank you. It's really lovely that you see, because it's with these women, it's kind of like we were having a brief overview of how your life goes when you were in childhood, how your mom encouraged you to read and study, and when you started in primary school, how your colleague helped you to notice head, hand, and heart, and then when you want to, then they encourage you to do PhD, where you studied overseas and met another woman, and then came back, and now you're sitting. You're so lucky that when you started your after the post PhD career, you met Hafdís, and you two are collaborating, and it's your piece of work together that led me to know about you and your.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, Hafdís, about you.
Yes, I could say a similar thing with the beginning. It was my mother and my 2 grandmothers that all supported me to study. None of them wanted me though to be a teacher. They wanted me to be a nurse or whatever, not especially a teacher. But that's what I wanted to do. But they were always very supportive, and for a similar reason, like Swanborg said, they themselves didn't get the opportunity to study, so they wanted their children to be able to. So that was they were in the beginning supporting me in the beginning. And then when I started teaching at the elementary school, I was lucky. I always there were always teachers around me who were ready to be innovative, to be creative, to do things differently, and not teaching in a traditional way. It's hard for me to mention any names because they came for a short time, but they were very supportive. But one of them, Hafdís Guðjónsdóttir, she got me one day. She said, "Would you like to come to a meeting with me? There are women that would like to run for parliament, or see if we can do that, because we want to change our society so it will benefit women and families more." I went to that meeting with her, and I thought it was wonderful. And then in the end, we decided, that was 51 years ago, to run for a parliament, and we got 3 women on the parliament, and just this whole group was so inspiring, so supportive, and we worked very close together. So at that time, I had my family, I had my 3 children to take care of, I had my job, but then 5 nights a week, I would go and meet with those women to figure out how we could do this. And just this whole group was, I would say, changed my life. It made a difference. And what happened was that I earned encouraged to go back to school and do my master and do my PhD. And I will always say it was because of all the work we did together, but it was a collaboration. It's hard for me to mention a one woman from another because it was the group effort. It was this collaboration. And you will see that's happened a lot to me, that it's in collaboration. When I went to school in US for my PhD, I was so lucky to meet maybe the person that really was the one that believed in me and encouraged me, and her name is Mary Dalmau. She is now gone, but I still mention her name all the time because she said this, or she encouraged me to do this. But she had created a group of women. It was between 20 and 30 women from about 20 or 30 different countries around the world. They were all doing educational leadership at the University of Oregon, and I got to be a part of their group. So that was one reason I also did educational leadership alongside with my special education. This group of women came together every Thursday. We had a soup from different countries, and then we would sit down and talk about women in education. And that's where I learned about many women that really had to struggle to be a part of education, because if when I think back and think about the theories that I learned about, they were usually by men, not by women. And that was why this group they said, we are not learning anything about women in education at the university, and since that is not happening, we have to do it ourselves. And we did a research, we did present at conferences, and we really got noticed. But then we never wrote up the research. We never publish because we had to do our PhD, our dissertation. So it is very sad that we didn't, but we did create small groups of 3 to 5 women that would interview each other about why they were a leader. And I said to them, I'm not a leader. I've never been a principal. I've never been a vice principal. I'm not a leader. And Mary said, yes, you are a leader. And she wanted me to participate. And what happened is that when I was interviewed, I realized that I was a teacher. I was leading a leader in my teaching job. So this group of women was very affected. Then I came back to Iceland and started at the university, and I looked for the group and I looked for persons to collaborate with. And it took 11 years until I found Swanborg. And I always say that when we met, it was just, we were having a cup of coffee. And I said to her, would you like to teach with me? And she said, yes. And I couldn't believe she wanted to teach with me. And like she said, I told her, just do what you want to with your best stuff. And I have to tell the story. I've told it very often that one day she got the whole day. I said, you have the whole day, just do what you want to. And I was just sitting in class as a student because I really was just there learning from her. And through the middle of the day, it was like the light came and I thought, wow, this is unbelievable what she is teaching us. And I got so excited. I ran around campus telling everyone what had happened for me, that I had found this wonderful teacher that was helping me with inclusive education. And people just looked at me and shook their head. And I think those years that it came afterwards, this group of women that managed to collaborate at the university is just, I feel so so fortunate that I met them and that I got to work with them, and that I got those last decade of my teaching in a space where I just loved every moment. And now I've been retired for 2 years, but I can't leave work. I just cannot leave work. And the best thing that happens is when some of them writes me or calls me and said, Hafdís, can we have a little discussion? Can you reflect on this with me? That is like a gift. And it happens quite often. So as you can hear, I'm not mentioning any names except Mary Dalmau, but I'm mentioning group of women. When women come together and collaborate, that the power that they can create is unbelievable. And that has been my inspiration through the years.
Thank you. I think the reason why I say at first with the name is I remember there's so many women, but if we don't have a name or don't mention that, they don't know who they are, and then some of them will get forgotten. So that's why in this I kind of like I want people to nominate someone, to name some, so that I could write a story of this. And I understand there are a lot of like unnamed women, and maybe we also even forget their names because they may influence, like you said, in elementary school. We don't even know who their name are. But I also think if we could remember some of the name, like if you could write down Mary's name for me, that would be great. I would search around. So it would be possible to retell the story to more people. And the other thing is, like you both talk about how your mom and how your grandmother supported you. For me, it's also similar. Like I had this experience. My mom and my auntie, they were two daughters of my grandmother, and when they were young, they were too poor to study. They couldn't even continue to go to the university, even when they wanted to. So now when I had the opportunity to study abroad, my auntie convinced my mom to support me, like if there's kind of like if I couldn't get a scholarship. So she said, but we wanted to do this, but at that time we don't have the condition to do it. Now she wants to do it. Why don't we support her? So I know all of these moments. I know to many people they're just ordinary people, but I put that down in my thesis. I wrote this. But this is where I come from. This is where I develop my own agency in my study because I'm supported by women. And it is also through this community that I want to tell the stories of this. I don't want them just to be forgotten. And so that's why I was like, if possible, it's many names. If not, we know we're surrounded by unnamed heroes. Heroines, it's also great. Yeah. And now I would like to ask if you two would like to talk a little bit about yourself, about your research and your collaboration. And I'm so keen to know about Svanborg, about what is innovation education. If you could start first.
Innovation education can be said to be the simple process of identifying a problem. And we have plenty of problems in the world, as we know.
Yes.
And then work on finding a solution and then presenting it. Yes. So the finding the problem is the heart, and then the head, and then the hand. So that's to simplify it very much. And it's about teaching this process and supporting when the students or the learners, however young they are, work on it. And the first step is identifying problems and really diving into, is this really the problem? Because often people come with kind of half of a solution and say, it's a problem that we need more people in the school. That's not really the problem. It's half the solution, because it's why do you need more people? So it's also about kind of diving behind the surface to find what is the real problem. And sometimes children would say it's a problem that we don't have playthings like things to climb in the schoolyard. And then I asked, why is it a problem? And and ask again, why? And then they find out there's so little to do. That's the problem in the free quarters. And one of the solution is this climbing thing, but it could also be a sandbox or something else.
Yeah.
So that's kind of very roughly the process that is about innovation education. And I used to teach it in primary school or grade school. And I was very impressed with it. And that was the reason that I did my master's research and later PhD research. And then when Hafdís asked me to join her in this course about inclusion, how can you teach a big class of students, any age, that is quite different. They come from different backgrounds and all sorts of different needs. How can a teacher help them to learn? And so that was about the course, what the course was about. And through teaching it with Hafdís, and when she saw the light, when I was teaching the group, she realized that this was a good approach in inclusion, to have the student teachers think about what are the problems that you want to solve in school, or the challenges. It's not necessarily a problem per se, but there are different challenges that you want to address and make things better. So that was kind of new for me to realize that this kind of approach that I was very good at, I'll just say that, was applicable in this context, in teaching in school. And I think this also came through, I have mentioned before, self-study. It's a special approach. It's a way of practitioner research that we've been doing through the years. Hafdís and I and Karen Ruth, that you probably read one piece from, and other authors as well. Self-study in teacher education, this method and methodology has helped a lot to realize what we're doing in our courses, how can we make it better, and also what is the value of the things that are good in our courses, in our teaching. It's about both, actually, I think. So I also want to applaud self-study, which has been a big part of my career since I finished my PhD. And at first I was a little concerned that I wasn't doing much research in innovation education or innovation and entrepreneurial education, but I was doing much research with Hafdís and other colleagues in teacher education with self-study. But I realized that that was also of great value, not just for us, but also our findings were really worthy of presenting to others. So maybe I'll stop here.
Have a pause here. We'll hear what Hafdís have to say about this.
Yes, I just want to continue with self-study because in the spring 1999, I went to the conference it was in Canada, ARA, and it's the American Educational Research Conference. And I had never been to a big conference like that. And I was just running around listening to all those big names, those famous names. And that was great. But then I came into this group and they were introducing a book and talking about research they did on their own practice. And just being there, I felt like I was home. I felt, okay, this is my group. And so I decided to study what they were doing. And they were doing a study on their own practice. And they had been doing this for 5 or 6 years. And they decided when they were graduating and starting to teach at the university, they were telling their students that they needed to reflect on their practice, to study their practice, to do actual research or participant research, at least study their practice. And then, but they were not doing it themselves. teachers, university teachers, were not studying their own practice and how they were teaching at the university, and they thought, we need to change this. So I came into the group when it had been functioning for some years, and was so lucky that when I started my teaching at the university the year 2000, I did self-study on my own practice from the first day to the end. And now I'm doing a study on how to retire. How do I do that? So I've done this the whole time. And this has made a difference. I agree with Swanborg. I thought I was going to do more studies on with teachers on how they were teaching different children, learning in different ways. I thought I was going to do more of that than I did. But I was doing a lot on teacher education. So how do you teach people to teach? And I thought, when I started my teaching, I thought I would just go into the classroom, tell them what I did, and tell them that what I did in my elementary teaching worked very well. I was a successful teacher, and I thought they would just copy me. But of course, they don't do that. I didn't do it. So why did I think they would do it? And that's when I started to really research what I needed to do to get them work. And there's one thing, so to continue also with inclusion, I felt I did so well in teaching people what they needed to do, teaching this diverse group of students, that they needed to do this and that. And I didn't see it happen in the schools in Iceland, in the classroom. I, of course, saw teachers do that, but not on the whole. So I thought, I have to completely change my teaching. And that's what started to happen when Svanborg and I worked together, was we really started to work differently. Some of the things we did, I had been doing them before, but they changed when Svanborg came in, because her way of thinking creatively was so advanced that we started to really create a different course. And when I started to see the difference from the beginning, when students started with us the first weeks, and I thought, I'm never ever going to be able to make them to see this in a different way. And then I saw what they did at the end of the course. And remember, this is only 4 months. I couldn't believe how much their writing and their tasks changed in this time. And I'm still so excited, because now we have data from more than 10 years, and you can see a pattern in every time. You can see they start out not very positive, they end with a completely different mind. So just thinking about teaching, I could talk about teaching all day long, every day. I just love to really go into and try to figure out, what am I doing and what can I do to make a difference, to get students to do this differently. And this is difficult to just keep it all in your mind. That's why self-study and some of the methods you learn there, and the creative methods we learn, because self-study is so open for creative methods. And that's also what I'm learning, is that if you use creative or different methods in your research, and creative ones, and when I mean by creating ones, you also use your hands to try to understand what's behind the words you have, what's behind what you see, and you start to do that with your hands. Like, Svanborg said, it's your head, but it's also your hands. Then you start to see so many different things that you miss if you only look at it in one way. And I'm not saying that one way doesn't work, like interviews or surveys or whatever. They give you information, but they are not enough. So so doing this and just really doing self-study, and what is happening is that self-study became a part of my life. My mind always goes into that to see, okay, so what am I doing, and what could I do differently? And if you had seen me last night when I went out, because I had heard that there was going to be a big explosion of the Northern Lights. And so I went out to look for them. I never found them because it happened when it was still bright outside, so you couldn't see it. But instead I saw the volcano erupting, which was unbelievable, and all the different ways, because I wanted to go out in the nature, in the wilderness, to see it. And we had to be creative to figure out how to drive our car in a place that was safe and illegal and all of that. We did though do one illegal thing that we just had to do that because we were just so lost. You can get lost in those places. So that's what has mattered to me. But I've also been researching things that are close to inclusive education, both what's happening in schools and in classroom, but also what's happening at the teacher education. Because after we started this work with our 10 years of experience, and I'm thinking, why do they continue to teach the way that we know is not working? We've been trying that for 30 years and it hasn't made a difference. Why are people not ready to change the teacher education in that way that we graduate people who are open for all students, not only some? So that's my passion also. So I try to combine it, but it is surprising to look back and see how much more I've been researching how to teach people to teach. I didn't even think of it when I started. I didn't even know that I needed to do that, because I thought, just tell them what you did and they will just copy you. No way. Stop doing that, all of you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this and being so honest with it, and about the whole journey, how you open up to the possibilities of this. And it just recalls to me, like, so I'm actually getting involved with a project called All Means All, and it is a project trying to develop open textbook for inclusive teacher education. Like, oh my God, I got new material that to share with my group member. That it is I think it's Erasmus project,
Okay.
and that's led by a university in Germany, a university in Ireland, and a university in Italy. So they're trying to get involved with this. And what they've been talking about with inclusive teacher education is like what you have been talking about. And like, oh my God, I got examples, and they've been practicing it, and it's super exciting for me to hear how you have been doing this and noticing that the initial assumption of how it would work completely didn't work, but you found a way that which works in your journey, and you did self-study with it. It's so exciting. Yes.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Good.
Yeah, just so. But now you said you're retired. Are you still doing this, or you have people in the university also doing what, kind of continuing developing what you've started?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm very happy that the young women that Svanborg and I have been working with, not for those 10 years, they came in when they finished their PhD and started working with us, and they are just continuing, and I get to, at least right now, I get to follow them a little bit and see what's happening, and I feel like they are taking it even step further than we did. So it is developing, it is working, and I'm just very proud of them that they are continuing and what they're doing. So yes, I'm trying to retire, but I am not doing very well because I'm very excited about education, everything that goes with it. Svanborg and I are going to a conference in what, 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks. I'm going to Hong Kong as a keynote speaker and maybe to some more places. So I'm still going, and I like
and I think
it.
you should go. You should go. They need to know. It is quite new. It is quite new. It is something I think you should still go and celebrate and express all of this to make sure people know about it. I think it is very, very important.
Yeah. And just to bring this together, when I think of this whole thing, I know, of course, it started in my childhood when I was brought up, but I also think participating with those groups of women, it made a difference. And really this group, this political group, this PhD students group, and then my colleagues at the university, those are the three biggest groups. I feel like it is so great to work with them because in all of those groups, they have been so ready to collaborate, to work together, to support each other. It's not been a competition, it's been collaboration through the whole time. So, and I'm sorry, I'm not good with the names. I'm more with those three groups, and I did put them down because they have made a difference, and I've seen how we have multiplied in coming together. We have managed to get so much further, so much more, because we were a group collaborating, and that has, when I look back, that is what I'm very proud of, that I was a part of those groups of women.
I think you have a name. You have the group name. That is also great. It's not more than individual. It's how you unite with each other, or you meet each other. You develop this group. It's great. What about you, Svanborg? What's your next steps?
Well, I was, before I retired a year ago, I thought a lot about that I didn't want to retire, and that I was dreading it because I live in the countryside. So I feared that I would go into my comfort zone, and I'm aware of this tendency to, I'm too lazy to go to town or something. So I am still working. I'm supervising 3 PhD students, and I'm working on writing with Hafdís, and we meet once a week to support each other as supervisors of PhD students. It's a kind of the similar thing as you had read the article about, and I think, but it's two-sided. It's good to maybe retire, then only have to think about your grandchildren or something, but it's also you have a lot of knowledge and experience that you want to share. So I'm still there, and I'm doing quite a lot of work, even though I'm not teaching per se, and I want to finish what Hafdís and I have started in writing. delivering that chapter, Hafdís.
Uh-huh.
So I'm kind of gradually retiring, even though financially I have retired. So I'm no longer having direct salary for that. So
Can I add to this? One thing we haven't mentioned, that both of us still have doctoral students.
Yeah.
And we both had 3 of them. One of mine graduated last December, but I still have 2, and Swanborg has 3. So that keeps us going also. And because she mentioned that we are supporting each other in doing that job. We meet on Thursdays, and I'm always so excited for our meetings that I sit down long before, waiting for that meeting to start. And I used to not like meetings, but I love our meeting. I love when we talk about things and support each other and reflect on what's going on. And I think that's so great. So and one thing you get to do when you're retired, you choose the tasks, and we are now allowed to choose the tasks that we want to, and we can skip all the ones we don't want to. And so that's a privilege.
That's a positive side of retirement. Only doing what only meeting people you want to meet. You choose to meet me today. Yeah. So I also think it's great that you also have this kind of co-supervisor self-study with a PhD student, even you have retired. And I think it's also important for them to see this, that you're still there holding their hands through when they pass through this journey. And you also have each other to discuss about. Can I ask a little bit about the supervision? Like in Iceland, do you have 2 supervisors for 1 PhD, or you have 1 like main supervisor?
It differs. Hafdís, maybe you want to respond to this because you also
Yes. Yes, it was changed some years ago that you had to have 2. But then in practice, they have not always followed that up. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that very often, although you are 2, it's the main is 1. So it's this work between the main. But then when the students is getting further into the study, we start to bring in the others, and the committee should be put together of 3. So 2, a main advisor, the second advisor, and a specialist, and even the specialist can be more. And then you start to bring, when it gets further, you start to bring them in and ask them to step in for certain things, it might be, or some collaboration or whatever. It's just different. So for 2 of my students, or 3 of them, I was quite alone with them. And one of them, the second supervisor, stepped in quite early, and the specialist also. So I feel like right now there's a team of 3 working, but with the others. So this depends quite a bit. We have a program, but we don't always go by the program as we are supposed to.
I think in each case it differs, right?
Yes.
And that's why it's kind of in the system, you need to have a program it works, but also you need to allow flexibility around it. Because for some people, it may be easier to have a main supervisor going through their own way. For some people, they may want to have a early kind of like a different view from a specialist or from a secondary one. So it's kind of like it has all this diversity for the students. They have different needs in this phase, I think.
Yeah. And it also depends on what kind of study they're doing. And it's just all different kinds that matters.
I think so. think it is. And so this comes to, we're talking about the possible futures now, and I would like to see if you have any words or notes that you would like to share to the younger you or to the people, your remaining PhD students, the early career researchers, if you would like them to know.
Yeah, I think we live in very precarious times, very uncertain times. We have wars and conflicts and migration of people that are flóttamenn, fleeing from their countries and for different reasons. And I think it's very important that we accept that this is a reality and that we need to be controlled by love and caring rather than nationality and this is my country and different looks and so on. I think it's very important and that education can play a big part in this to cultivate love and caring. And it's a kind of a part of the sustainability thinking that is not only about environment, it's also about the social issues and of course economical. They all are weaved together and influence each other. So I think that's kind of what I think we need to accept that there is going to be migration of people and we need to address that with caring and love. And then I'm also thinking, of course, about IE, artificial intelligence, which it can kind of be used for different purposes. And I think we should address it with seeing the potentials and also be guided by care and rather than greed, which is a very strong factor also in the world. So I don't know if this is and also believe in people, the goodness in people, and I think so many young people are doing good things, and I really hopeful for that they are going to make things better. I believe in the young, and also with our experience to share to them. I think I'll stop here because it's a lot to think about the future, and it can go so many ways. Hafdís, maybe you want to respond?
Yeah, when you say future, the only thing we know is that we don't know the future. But I agree that education can make a difference.
Yeah.
Each teacher in a school can make a difference, and teacher education can make a difference. And I feel like we have not used that opportunity that we have well enough or strong enough. We could use it much better to make a difference. And instead of putting all the emphasis on subjects and having people taking tests and all this competition, we should rather look at what everyone has to bring in, and we should look at how they're feeling and how people can support each other from around the world, everywhere. So I think that matters more than the grades students are getting. But so, because if you are going into this this project all for all, I think that is very important. But I also know that we need to think about that differently, because we have been trying that for so many years, and I feel like we are not always successful. So we have to see, okay, what is it that can make us successful? And I think believing in students, believing that every student comes to school to learn and wants to do their best, and start from there. And if they are not doing their best, there is something going on in their mind or in their home or what in their environment that we need to look into and help them work with. I think we have a lot to do, and I know that it's not easy. It's even always more complicated. I thought when I was a little girl that if this war would end, then there would never be a war again in the world, because now we know how awful that is. And I feel like I have lived with that all my life. And I think we need to start to really work with the emotional stuff and with the goodness in every person. That's where we need to work. And education, in all levels, has the opportunity, and we could use that opportunity much better than we are doing.
I think so. So the All Means All project actually talks all about this, not just in the school education, but in this, like, so the chapter I'm going to contribute in, it's called social space orientation, like how we could make a space more inclusive. And it's also about transitioning from school to the society and about the community. So this is what they have been looking at. I think after the first phase, they're also looking at and to see how we could develop in different contexts, because the current phase, like I said, it's Erasmus, so it's mainly people based in Europe will contribute to it. So they're thinking about the next phase, how people in Asia could contribute to this and how they see inclusion and what are the challenges in their societies. So I think that this is ongoing, and like you said, we can't predict the future, but we could have our belief in this and try to do things to make it towards what we want to see. And I'm glad to know that you have actually practiced it. You have been doing it and still doing it. It's really exciting to know of this in the beginning of the week. Yes.
Sounds good. Very interesting what you're doing.
Yes. And now we're coming to the questions asked by the previous interviewees. So you both have take a look at it, right? Some of them. So is there a question that you want to answer? Or shall I read it to you?
Which one do you want answers to?
So I think it'd be really interesting if you could answer the question from the library one, because I'm quite curious about the books we read and the writers. So when we talk about Inspirational Women, which writer and the book, if you have one, first comes to your mind? How does her or their writing influence you?
If I may start, I thought a lot about this, and I read quite a lot, and different things. I like criminal stories, and I like Isabel Allende, and I like different things. But I think the one that I want to mention is a woman called Auður Haraldsdóttir, and she published her first book, the one that inspired me a lot, and I really liked reading in 1979, and it was the time when the women's list, that the political one that Hafdís was mentioning, it was the same time. There was a lot of rise up for women and interest in that, and I was surprised to learn that none of her stories, Auður Haralds, have been translated to English, which I think they should. And the book that I was impressed with is called The Everyday Hero: 3 Safe Methods to Have Illegitimate Children. And it's quite a political book. It's about her own life and her struggles and challenges, but it's so funny in way. It's ironic and sometimes exaggerated, but it's a very special narrative style, which gives one joy. It's got a lot of humor, sometimes black humor, and it was such a modern story, I think, and still is, because many things have gone better. Some of them we can actually think this women's list that Hafdís was a part of. and also the discourse in the society and so on. But this kind of discourse has a bit changed now in recent years, like it's gone backwards somewhat. But I really loved this book, the Everyday Hero. And
I hope it's translated to English as soon as possible.
yeah,
Ask
I
the
would
publishers.
yeah, really love it if it would, and because it's yeah, it was such a good thing for me as a young mother and a young teacher to read about her. I had a partner, and I didn't have the same kind of troubles, but I could recognize so many like adversaries that she experienced, but she did it in such a funny way, and I loved it. So that's only of the thousands of books I've read and been impressed with. This is kind of it was kind of a doorway for me, and I really loved it. So yeah.
Yes. Would you like to write it down so that I can search it?
Yes.
Maybe it haven't got English translation version. Maybe it had a Chinese version. I don't know. I'll search it.
Yeah.
You never know.
There's a little piece about Auður Hafdísdóttir, the author, I think, in Wikipedia. I'm gonna share it.
Yeah, that'd be great. So in the end, they will all come up in the YouTube links also, that the people could take a read at it if they're interested in knowing more. Yeah. So, what about you, Hafdís? Do you have someone in mind?
Yes, I've always loved to read, and when I was a child, I was always reading, and I just remember times when people thought I was not doing anything because they found me here and there reading, and when I was supposed to go to sleep at night, I would read under my blanket. And when I think about, what stays with me are all stories of girls that didn't go the ordinary way. And Green Gable was, of course, one. Pippi Langstrom was another one. And then there was one that I don't know the English name, but she was also always getting into trouble. So I seem to really like stories about girls that got in trouble. For a while, I didn't read as many books as I wanted to because for pleasure, because I was always reading academics. I read a lot of academic books and chapters, and I was doing that, and I just couldn't read as much. But then some years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to stop watching television at night, and instead of taking up a book, I started with crime stories, and then I got enough of that. And what I really liked the last few years is I'm back to reading stories about girls and women. So I like to read the stories about women in war, like in the World War II and in other wars. And it's surprising how much time it took to bring them out, because it sounded like it was only men who were doing the work, and the women, they didn't write about the part the women played in that. Then I've been reading a lot about women from Palestine. I've been reading a lot about women from countries where women are not privileged, where women have to fight for everything. And then I also like to read about the challenges women in Iceland had to go through, and one of them is called Óreiða á Striga, and I think that's the name of the book. And when I read that one, it's about a woman who traveled around Iceland and lives in 3 places, and 2 of them are places where my 2 grandmothers lived. And I felt I was reading about my grandmothers and my husband's grandmother. And I just loved reading that. So since then, I have been picking up all books I can find about women around 1900 in Iceland, before and after, and reading about how they managed to get through, because their lives were very difficult. So these are the type of stories that I look for. Of course, then I sometimes take a book and read in one night something very easy, very relaxing, and I wouldn't be able to tell you the name of the book or what it was about the next day. It was just for the pleasure of the activity more than the pleasure of the what it was saying. And sometimes I like to read poems just to play with the words, but really learning about women. But I've also gone into reading about men in societies that are very different from Iceland, and I've often found that a challenge, uncomfortable, feeling I don't know if I want to read this, but I do because I want to try to understand the differences as the similarities of the world.
That's very interesting. I'm also quite curious, like among all the readings that you have gone through about women from the 1900s to the 20th century, like, is there any book in English that you would like to share so that I could, or it's all in Icelandic?
Okay, they are not all in Icelandic, but now I'm thinking which ones were in English. Some of the like in the World War II. Yes, I'm just gonna go and get it.
That's a good part of staying at home. Get it.
Yeah. I'm right here because I just finished this one. And this is the second book. It calls it Tjeka's Journey, and the other one before this one was The Tattooist of Auschwitz. This is World War II books and after the World War II, and it is devastating to read. But at the same time, it's happening right now, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why those things are happening when we know how awful they are and were. And it's again, why can't we learn from experience? It's probably the same as when I was teaching. That's not the way you learn. You have to shake people up in a different way. Yeah. But those books, because this one is built on a true story. The first one, the author talked to the tattooist and while she was working with him, she learned about Tjeka, and because he told her about it, so she started to get that about it. So it's built on this story. This woman was there, but she had to research to be able to write it, and so this is one that I just finished, and this came out some years ago, and I'm just finding books now because I'm trying to read at least one book for every week of the year.
That's a good thing. So, and the reason I chose this book, I chose this question, if you remember, is because there is a Glasgow Women's Library in Scotland. So I don't know if you have this similar kind of women's library in Iceland.
Yeah.
But I think they have a when I was doing the podcast there with guests, they have this shelf. They have women recommending one of the book also by women and for women to mention it. I think it's a really good idea. And I was thinking maybe even for my Mapping Inspirational Women initiative, that I could in the future, when I can travel, have a small suitcase of books recommended by my guests and traveling around. So that's why I like, if you ask me to choose a question, I'll go with this one first and know about the question. I'll try to see if I could find the everyday hero.
Here's another one, and it's called Þá breyttist allt, or Then Everything Changed. And this is about women that have moved to Iceland for different reasons, and they are telling their stories.
If
and
you hold it
this
in
is
the middle, I couldn't see it. If you hold it in the middle a little bit, I couldn't see it. Yes, now I can see it.
yes,
It's in Iceland.
and yes, and this book I read in one go, one night. I couldn't stop. I know some of them, and this started because you're talking about the library. It started at the library, that a library invited women from different countries who lived in Iceland to come and tell their stories. And one of them was my master student, and that's what she did for her master project. And I don't remember her master project now, but it is in English and very easy to get access to through the internet. And then they have done lots of different things, but this is what they did last year. They interviewed those women, or some of them just wrote their stories, like the one that I know. She just wrote her story herself. She didn't. She was not interviewed. She can write in Icelandic, so she wrote it herself.
Great. I think that's really something I hope I could see similar things in Scotland as well, because when I moved from London to Scotland, I could see like in big cities I'm feeling okay, but when I'm in the small places, I feel like I'm so alienated. I didn't know about it until I went to Glasgow Women's Library, and I saw that one of their founding sponsors was actually a Chinese woman. I'm like, really? There are a lot of like these hidden stories that I think in the libraries they're telling it, and sometimes that in the public space we didn't really see it. Oh, that's her. That's her.
Yeah, this is
That's great. So it is. I think because like before Svanborg's message to the future, talking about the migration and all this, the world is moving around. It's no longer like this is the boundary, no one's coming through. Everyone's coming through, and you also want to travel to different places. It has been different, and how we are going to deal with this kind of diversity already existing in the society. This is where education comes in. This is where we want the real inclusion. It's not just for a special thing, it's everywhere. Yes.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you to leave one question for the future interviewees, if you have one? One or two?
Yes.
Future interviewee. Hafdís, do you have one?
I had one, and I didn't write it down, but I had it this morning, and I'm trying to pick it up again.
Yeah, this one might be changed to women that have.
But
I'm also referring to asking about maybe there's because when we were teaching Hafdís and I in a similar time in grade school, we found the policies, the curriculum, to be supportive to the way we wanted to teach, to be creative and to engage all students, give all students space to learn in their way and using their strengths. So it might be also a policy or some kind of condition. There could be a atmosphere in a school, or and even theories in.
Yes.
Thank you, Swanborg, because this is what we talked about yesterday. Thank you for putting that forward. So I'm just going to support her question.
That's good. That's a question from you too.
We kind of created it together because we were preparing a little bit yesterday, and this was something that we.
And I like that you mentioned about it's either people or a condition or policy or theories. It kind of opens up for people to think about what has been really backing them up in the life and career regarding education. Education. Yeah, I remember it. Talking to you reminds me of like 2 weeks ago. I was doing a SERA ECR. We have this conversation with scholars. We're talking about education, and so he's German. He's German. He's German, but he's taught in Scotland. He said that in German there's a term for educationalist, but in English you don't have that one. And then they noticed that there will be something like translate lost in translation when you have to speak a different language. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to mention before we finish that Hafdís and I and the third woman, we were editors and we were actually kind of entrepreneurs in publishing a book, or it ended as a online journal about teachers that you could learn from, like good teachers. And this is we had some printed, even though it's an online journal. We had it was about 10 teachers. Each article is about one teacher, and I wanted to share with you the person that I mentioned earlier that influenced me, and I wrote her story, Rósa Guðjónsdóttir, and in all these articles there are long abstracts in English by the end of each article, so you can get kind of the main.
That's great. Thank you for sharing this. I'll also share it with the SERA ECR network, because we also would like to kind of like to read a bit more widely about what we are talking about.
Yeah, maybe I'll share with you the whole issue.
Yeah, if you could. You don't have to do it now. If you share with me later, it's also fine.
Yeah, okay.
Takes time.
It's there.
Yeah, so that's why it's got it. I saw it. I'll put it in the Twitter as well to have more people to know about it. And I think it's really I'm really happy to see all of this and to know all of the stories, because early this morning I was writing to my kind of co-authors in the All Means All project. I was talking to them like how we could make social kind of with this social space orientation with inclusive. Now I even have a small answer from my own podcast, like listen to my podcast. There are actually already people doing things. There are all the links that you could read. If you can read Icelandic, you can even read more. If not, you can read the abstract of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those are
longer than the usual abstracts. I think about 600 or 800 words, like the English ones.
That's good. Hafdís, you were trying to say something.
I was just trying to say they were longer than a usual abstract.
That's good.
That was all. Yeah.
It's good to give a bit more details about the story. That's
great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both for your time, and really appreciate that. And thanks for people who's also listening to the Mapping Inspirational Women in the podcast. And we would like to hear more women's stories, and let's us celebrate.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and thank you so much for inviting us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.